Okay, hello everybody. We've already done the basics of percentages now, and most of the work is finished off. The only point that I've left out on for now is concept number 24, and this is the basics of elections. Okay, the basics of elections. So, what happens in any regular basics of elections? So what happens is in any particular election is that there are candidates who are contesting for the election for a seat or maybe for any position, and particularly those people they come together and they fight the election. It's called fighting or contesting or whatever. So in that particular contesting of elections, what happens is one person has to win, and the person who gets more votes out of the other or more votes than the other wins. So the total we what we assume in the election is that 100% of votes are casted, and one of the two candidates would be getting higher number of votes than the other. So let's assume A got 40% of the votes out of the 100% votes that were polled. So B would get 100% minus 40% of the votes, which is also equal to 60% of the votes. Okay, 60% of the votes. So what happens is that in the 60% of the votes for the category, this person is definitely going to win. There is a gap of 20% that has been created because the winner got 20%. The winner got 20% more more votes than the loser, but the 20% of the total votes. Okay, so this is the clarity, and the concept that I'm talking about here is if the winner gets X% votes, then let's assume the winner gets X% votes, then the loser would get 100 minus X% of the votes. Okay, 100 minus X% of the votes. This was being discussed over here. Moving on to the question directly. This is the question is going to definitely help you out a lot. In an election between P and Q, P gets 40% of the total votes and thus loses by 10 votes. Find the total number of votes. So again, assuming that total number of votes were 100%, P gets 40% votes and Q gets 60% votes. How did I arrive at Q getting 60% votes? It was from 100% minus 40%, which gives me 60%. Okay. And thus P is losing the election by 10 votes. The gap over here is 20%, the 20% of the total votes. The 20% gap that we have over here is there is a loss by 10 votes. The loss is by 10 votes. If the value of 20%, now what we have over here is we have the percentages on the left hand side and we have an absolute value. We have an absolute value on the right hand side. So the question is complete here. 20% is equal to 10 votes. We have to find out, according to the question, the total number of votes. The total number of votes were assumed in the beginning to be 100%. And to reach from 20% to 100%, we'll have to multiply it by 5. Similarly, from 10 votes, if we multiply it by 5, it becomes 50 votes. Okay, so 100% votes is 50 votes. So this is my answer. This is my clear cut answer. Moving on. If Z% of the total votes are invalid, then the total valid votes are 100 minus Z%. What happens is in an election, if let's assume 100 votes are polled, the election commission or the conducting body declares a few votes to be invalid. Okay, so these invalid, let's say 5% votes were declared invalid, so there would be no election which would happen on the invalid votes. All the votes should be valid, and the election would shift its focus from the 5% votes to the 95% votes which are now declared valid by the commission. Okay, by the conducting body. So this is what we're talking about. If uh, if we are now going to play the game not on 100% but on 95%, so we would consider 95%. This is 100 minus z is basically equal to 95%. We're going to work only on the 95% now. So any kind of winning or any kind of losing would start off, would consider its source to be 95% or 100 minus Z votes. Okay, got the clarity? I'll move on to the question now. In an election between two candidates, 5% of the registered voters did not cast their vote. 10% of the votes were found to be either valid or of nota. Nota means none of the above. So this means the vote would not go to anybody. The votes winning candidates received 60% votes in his favor and won the election by 17271 votes. Find the number of registered votes. Okay, so I'll just start solving it. There are 100% votes which were casted in the beginning. 5% voters did not cast their vote. This is basically 100% means voters present. Voters present. 5% is equal to who did not cast their vote. Now I'm going to work on the 95%, but it says 10% of the votes were invalid or nota. So out of 95%, 10% are nota or invalid. Another 90% out of this is where the election is going to happen. The winning candidates received 60% votes in his favor. Out of the 90%, the winning candidate is receiving 60% votes. Accordingly, what is the losing candidate winning? The losing candidate is receiving 40% votes. But you're gonna ask me, the base that we have over here is of 90. The base that we have over here is of 90. But what I'm gonna tell you is that at each and every level, this is level 1, this is level 1, the sum should be 100%. Similarly, level 2, the sum should be 100%. This is level 3 and the sum should be 100%. Now this again is level 4, so the sum should be 100%, but it helps us in our calculations. That is why we are always going to split it into the portions of 100. Okay, we're definitely going to split it in the portions of 100. So 60 is here, 40 is here. Out of 90%, 60% voters were in the favor of the one who won, who of the one who won. Okay, of the one who won the elections. Okay, who succeeded in the elections, and 40% went to the loser of the elections. So what it says is the votes winning candidate received 60% of votes in his favor and won the election by 1721 votes. This means the gap is equal to 1721 votes, 17271 votes. Also, the gap here is 60 minus 40 is 20%. So just see how I'm gonna take this. Now it tells me what is the number of registered votes. It is asking me basically tell me the value of 100%. So I have 17271. This 17271 is made out of what? It is made out of the 20% gap that I had. The 20% gap is dependent on 90% over here. It's dependent on 90% over here. We want to move up the ladder now. It is also dependent on 95% over here, which is up there. And this is ultimately going to lead me to a point where I need to show the answer of 100%. Okay, 1%. Now I'm going to solve it. I'll help you solve it. I'll use a different color pen. 1% sign gets cut off with another percentage sign. The 2% signs would give me two hundreds over here, two different hundreds over here. Now I'm gonna start cutting it off. 20 ones are 25s are 5 ones are 5 18s are 5 20s are 5 19s are. Okay, so 19 ones are 19 nines are 171, another 171, 19 zeros are 0, and 171. Again 9 twos are 18, 9 ones are 9, 9 zeros are 0, 9 ones are 1. 2, this is the this is the this, and we have three zeros behind 101, 1, 2, 3. So the total number of voters comes out to be 101,000 or 1 lakh 1,000. Okay, so I am going to tell you how I use the trickle down theory or the trickle up theory rather. This is how I am moving up from the bottom. I have the value of 20% gap between the winner and the loser, which is 17271. So I move up the ladder from 20%. Where did this 20% came out of from? This 20% was a part of the 90% which we assumed. Why did I assume 90% here? Because there were 10% invalid votes. Why did I assume 95% over here? Because 5% of the people did not cast their votes. And why do I have 100% over here? Because this is where the election starts from. Okay, this is where the election starts from. This is the base value. This is the base point where the election is beginning from. So 100% is the value which I need to find out. I would have the 17271 would have all the components of 20%, 90%, and 95% in them. And I need to find out the value of 100%. So I put it in the numerator. So I put it in the numerator. So this is how this comes out to be. I'll move on to the next question. In a village election between three candidates, 80% of the voters cast their votes, out of which 3% votes were declared invalid. The winning candidate got 42680 votes, which were 55% of the total valid votes. Find the number of valid votes received by the candidate who stood third, given that he received only 10% of the total valid votes. Okay. 100% voters were present. 20%. I'm just gonna like replace my color. 100% of the voters were present, out of which 20% casted their votes. 80%, 20% did not cast their votes, and 20% did not cast their votes, and 80% cast their votes. Out of which 3% voters were declared invalid. Okay, 3% votes were declared invalid, and out of this, 97% voters were still who were there and giving the votes. Now, the winning candidate got 42680 votes, which were 55% of the total valid votes. So 55% of the total valid votes we are sitting at. These are total valid votes, TVV. Okay, total valid votes 55%. This is the winner. Okay, now there are three candidates, so two more percentages are yet to come. It says the one who stood third got 10%. So 55 plus 10 is 65. The percentage left out is 35%. Okay, now this makes it 100%. I've told you to have a summation of 100% at every level. The first level has 100%, the second level has 100%, the third level has 100%. Now the fourth level as well has 100% with it. So the question here is, find the number of valid votes received by the candidate who stood third, given that he had received only 10% of the valid votes. Now if I have received 55% of the valid votes, if I have received 55% of the valid votes, then the winning candidate is getting 42680. I need to find out the value of 10% votes here, which is very easy. 5 11s are this, and 5 2s are 10. 11 ones are 11, 11 threes are 33, 11 eights are 88, and another 8, 11 eights are 88. Now 2 eights are 16, 2 eights are 16, 17, 2 threes are 6, 7. 7760. 7760 is the final number that we are looking for. I hope you understand this theory. I'll just remove it from here. This question was mostly based on proportions, but had they asked you to go up the ladder, the calculations might have become a little difficult. The reason is that we have 97 over here. Okay, this would have made the calculation a little difficult. So it's good that it was a basic question and that the value of 55% was given and they were asking you the value of 10. Okay, so watch out for such questions. They might look big, but trust me, they are very, very easy to go through. In an election, there were three candidates, A, B, and C. 10% of eligible voters did not vote. Out of those who voted, 45% voted for A, 35% voted for B, and the remaining 20% voted for C. 30% of the votes polled for A, 30% of the votes, 30% of the voters were polled for A, and 20% of the votes were polled for B. No, 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 no. 30% of votes polled for A and 20% of the votes polled for B were later deemed invalid, while all the votes polled for C were deemed valid. If A got 882 votes more, which are valid, than B, then how many valid votes did C get? Okay, this might sound like a tricky question, but we'll follow the same approach that we've been following ever since. Okay, the approach here is C. 100% total votes, 10% eligible voters did not vote, 90% voted. Out of those who voted, 45% were given to A, 35% were given to B, and remaining 20% were given to C. 30% of the votes polled for A and 20% of the votes polled for B were later deemed invalid. If 30% of the votes, if 30% of the votes are invalid, if 30% of the votes are invalid, then 70% of the votes are valid. If 20% of the votes are invalid for B, then 80% of the votes are valid for B. Got it? The invalid. Now I'm gonna find out what are the number of valid votes of A and B. Okay, 7 5s are 35, 7 4s are 28, 31.5. This is the percentage of valid votes for A, and 8 5s are 40, 0 4, 8 3s are 24, 28%. These are the number of valid votes for A, B, and 20% is already the number of valid votes. There are no invalid votes for C. Okay, so valid, valid. Now, now what is being asked for? If the difference between A and B is 882, the difference between A and B, 28 minus 31.5 is equal to 3.5. The value of 3.5 stands at 882. Then how many votes did C get? C is receiving 20% of the votes. So I'm going to multiply it by 20%. 7 5s are 35, 1 more 0 goes up. 7 1s are 7, 7 2s are 14, 7 6 are 42. 5 4s are 20, and 4 6 are 24, 4 2s are 8, 9, 10, 4 1s are 4, 5 0 4 0 becomes the answer. Okay, so 5040 becomes the answer of how many votes did C get. Pretty easy. Just try to understand where I come from. The only focal point in this entire question for you would be this point, where these are the valid votes. These are the valid votes for A and B. These are the valid votes for A and B. Okay, so this is the last question of elections that we'll be dealing with, and when now we are going to deal with questions where there are more than two candidates, and we have very particular questions being asked over here. Okay, so there are this question is coming out of ratios as well. Okay, there are three people, and Arjun, Bhaskar, and Saral. Arjun got 50% more votes than Saral. If Saral got 100, uh, Arjun got 150, and Saral got 2% votes less than Bhaskar. 2% votes less than Bhaskar. Okay, so instead of doing this calculation, I'll help you do it with an easier calculation. Bhaskar, Saral, and A. I'm moving Arjun from the first position to the last position because of a reason. In ratios, you have to have no gaps in the middle. You can have gaps at corners, they can be easily filled. Okay, in the particular chapter of ratio, I'll help you how this works out. The see, Arjun is getting 50% more votes than Sarul. So let's first work on the 2%. It's more difficult, but it's better to we should work on the harder thing before. Sarul got 2% votes less than Bhaskar. Okay, Bhaskar is 100. Sarul got 98 votes. Um, and Arjun got 50% more votes than Sarul. Saril is getting 98. 50% of 98 is equal to 49. So if I add 49 to it, I get 17. and 9 plus 1 10 147. So this is 49 higher, the gap is 49 over here, and this is 2% less. The difference between the votes of Bhaskar and Sarul is 1296. Bhaskar and Sarul, okay, the two votes is 1296. Then what is the half the difference between Arjun and Bhaskar? Arjun and Bhaskar. The number of the difference of votes between Arjun and Bhaskar is 47. 147 minus 100 is 47. 47 upon 2. So seems like an easy question. 4 ones are 4, 4 threes are 12, 4 twos are 8, 4 fours are 16. Okay. So I need to multiply 324 with 47. 7 fours are 28, 7 twos are 14, 15, 16, 7 threes are 21, 2, 2, 6, 8, multiplied by 4 fours are 16, 4 twos are 8, 9, 4 threes are 12. 8, 2. From the last two digits, I know this is the answer, but I'll still carry on. And another 12, then 5, 1, 5, 2, 8, 8. This is the final answer. Okay, this is the final answer. This is how you reach it in a quick manner. The only reason I shifted from A from here to here is that it would have gotten a little difficult. And also starting off with a 2%. Starting off with the 2% in the beginning gives me a head start. The only reason is that the 2% thing is more difficult to crack. So it's better, it's much better for you. It's much better for you to crack the 2% theory first and then go on to the 50%. Because 50% is easy. Anything which is an even number can easily be split into 50%, like into two equal parts. Had it been an odd number also, had this 98 or some other, let's assume it was 97 over here, we could have still like gotten very easily through the 50%, but it was tougher to get through the 2% wala problem, the 2% problem. So the 2% problem was sorted here first, and another 50% problem was sorted here on the next round. So this is the entire thing which you need to learn about elections. Okay, I'll just take you through that one more step which we talked about over here. In this particular question, 5% were did not cast it, or did not cast any vote. Nota was 10%, and then 60 and 40 was split. So can you see this ladder which we have to go through? This ladder we need to climb up. Okay, and the ladder that we need to climb up is something that is really going to help us throughout the election process. If you know how to crack this ladder, then you'll be able to go through the election questions very easily. Got it? Practice this question over and over again. Practice the questions which were asked in previous years, and do let me know if you have any other upcoming problem. All right. Thank you.